question. Let's go and talk about ellipses, which are the three dots that are after this song title. We're gonna have a punctuation lesson. She probably thinks that she was a second choice. That's why she's asking these questions. When someone laughs at you and makes fun of you in private, them supporting you in a public setting can feel performative and disingenuous. You know, it is just a question, but the answers could have detrimental emotional consequences. Through that question, you are illustrating your experience. This reminds me of All Too Well, the 10-minute version, Taylor's version. This is becoming kind of existential now. It's just a question. It's just a question. Hi everyone, welcome to this video. On my channel, I analyze song lyrics very in-depth through the lens of literary analysis. Today we're analyzing the song Question by Taylor Swift from her newest album, Midnights. We're going to be discussing the song meaning. I will make sure to link my playlist of Midnights analyses so far below for you, and my Taylor Swift analyses playlist as well. I analyze quite a lot of Taylor Swift on this channel. I think we're up to about 30 plus analyses so far, so I will make sure to link my Taylor Swift analysis playlist below for you. We're almost done with all the folklore songs. We're making good headway on Evermore. I've also touched upon her other albums as well. Now I'm excited that Midnights is going to be in the mix too. After I'm done with all the songs, I will be doing album summaries and other fun things as well, so make sure to stay tuned. Here are a list of literary terms I may refer to throughout this video. As a quick disclaimer, everything I discuss is just my own personal opinion. Music is a very subjective thing, and I always love hearing what you think down below in the comments. This song title is really interesting. The way I personally read it is as follows. Question. That's how I read it. Let me know if you read it the same way or not. Let's go and talk about ellipses, which are the three dots that are after this song title. We're gonna have a punctuation lesson. Ellipses can be used for different purposes. They can be used in place of omitted words. So in writing, ellipses can be used to show the reader that words have been removed. I don't think there are words omitted from the song title, so we're gonna cross off number one here. Ellipses can also be used for a pause, for dramatic effect, and to create suspense. It can depict a small pause or silence in text, which is ideal for dramatic effect. For example, it can be used before the punchline of a joke or a big reveal. I do think there's a little bit of drama present in the song title, trailing off into silence. In speech, we sometimes leave sentences unfinished for a variety of reasons. Maybe we forget what we want to say, or maybe our listeners already know what we'll say, so we don't need to finish saying it. This could be represented by an ellipses. It comes at the end of a sentence or a quote. It's like someone is trailing off. For me, the ellipses here, the ... serves a few purposes. I do think there is a pause for dramatic effect. And I also think that it indicates an emotional state. We're gonna go through this song, so it's gonna make more sense to you as we discuss it. But to me, this song is about a protagonist who wants some answers. She has a question, and to me, the ellipses here indicate an emotional state where you're just kind of like past the point of frustration. You know how sometimes you're in a situationship and you're just like, what is happening? The events of this situationship are illogical at this point. The actions of the other person are just like this, right? Like I have no words for it because it's illogical. It's not anything that can be analyzed rationally. I think it gets to a point where you wanting answers about like a romantic interest turns into frustration, and then sometimes that frustration turns into like delirium a little bit. It's kind of like that feeling when you're staying up too late and you start laughing at nothing. That's the sort of emotion that I think about when I read this song title. That's why I read it like question. Like I want answers, but it also doesn't really matter because I'm over this. That's how I personally interpret this song title. The fact that there is a literal question mark after the ellipses is why I think this, because it says question ... So there's a pause and then there's a question mark, right? A question mark symbolically represents a question. So we have two indicators of a question wanting to be asked, and they're separated by some dramatic silence. The fact that there is a question mark here to me is comical. That's why I associate like a feeling of delirium with this and a feeling of being over it. This song title gives me the vibe of someone texting you like 5 question marks, and like there's a meme of someone that just goes like this. They're just like, that's what I think about. So this song is really interesting. I want to talk about how I think this song is related to Taylor's other songs. I posted a TikTok, a reel, and a short talking about this. I'll link it down below. I think that this song, Question, is linked to Out of the Woods and Style. I say this for a few different reasons. The first one being the distorted voice. This song starts off with the lyrics, I remember, and it's distorted. If you remember Taylor's song Out of the Woods from 1989, there's a lyric that literally says, I remember, and it's repeated all throughout that song. It's a very integral part of that song. My guess is that this song is about the same relationship that the song Out of the Woods is about. I think the voice here is distorted to create space between when this memory occurred, out of the woods, and now when the protagonist may be thinking back to that memory. The voice distortion creates space. Now we're in a moment of reflection. If we look at the first line of this song, it says good girl, and this reminds me of the lyric, good girl Faith from Style. Listen, allegedly, Out of the Woods and Style are about the same relationship. So I think that this song is also about the same relationship. The last line of verse 1 in this song says, because you painted all my nights a color I've searched for ever since. And then there's a lyric in Style that says, the rest of the world was in black and white, but we were in screaming color. So to me personally, I think that there is definitely a link between this song, Style, and Out of the Woods. I think they're about the same relationship. I would love to know what you think about that, so feel free to share your thoughts down below in the comments. Good girl, sad boy, big city, wrong choices. Here we have a laundry list of context clues. There was a good girl, and I do think the purpose of that phrase is to link it to the song Style with the lyric, good girl Faith. Sad boy, this indicates that the love interest here was sad. He was in his emo vibes. They were in a big city. I'm assuming it's going to be New York, just going off of the context of Taylor's life. And I do want to state that while I think this song is probably about Taylor Swift's relationship with Harry Styles, I'm sure that's what we're all thinking. We don't know if it's 100% autobiographical or not. This could be inspired by true events and then extracted and fictionalized. I don't want to link this to actual people. We're going to create some space here. We're just going to use the words protagonist and love interest to refer to the people in this song. So the big city here, I'm imagining New York. Wrong choices. When we look at the lyrics that were written about this relationship, allegedly about this relationship, there was the lyric saying that we were born to fall apart but fall back together. That to me is indicative of an unstable relationship. No stable foundation. It was always kind of faltering. I think that one reason it might have been faltering like that was due to wrong choices. That's what I'm thinking about here. The wrong choices could have been made because the boy was sad. This could have also happened because the love interests may have never really found themselves to be on the same frequency, never on the same page. We had one thing going on. I swear that it was something because I don't remember who I was. And this last line is very important. It's very telling because you painted all my nights a color I've searched for ever since. Okay. Taylor really likes to define things through colors. You know, we have an entire album called Red. We have a very beautiful song called Maroon on the album Midnights. Within this relationship, we have the lyric, the rest of the world was black and white, and we were in screaming color from the song Out of the Woods. And here we have the mention of color again. It really seems like Taylor feels things and maybe even interprets things through colors. Emotions equate to colors for her. The love interest here painted the protagonist's night a specific color that she has been trying to find ever since. Even though this relationship was never on steady ground, there was a lot of passion in this relationship. That's how I'm interpreting this. And I talk about passion a lot on my channel, more in my Lana Del Rey analyses. I will link my Lana Del Rey analysis playlist below in case you're interested. I always talk about passion like this. Passion is a very beautiful thing. However, it can get out of hand very quickly, and when it does, it can be dangerous because you can become reckless, things can get out of hand. When things are out of balance for too long, lots of metaphorically detrimental things can occur, emotionally, spiritually, etc. So I am thinking a little bit about passion here. Not to the extent that I usually do with my Lana Del Rey analyses, but still. I also think about someone really imprinting on the protagonist. Think about it. If you meet someone who introduces you to a brand new color, to a brand new experience, a brand new feeling you've never felt before, you're likely never going to forget them because they're providing you with something novel that you can't really recreate yourself. It's not like someone is showing you a new restaurant and then you can go back there yourself and enjoy your favorite sandwich. When it's things that are intangible like this, when it's an experience with someone, when it's a feeling, an emotion, it's very difficult to recreate that again. This is what may make it difficult to get over someone, even though you know that there could have never been a viable, sustainable relationship with them. This is really telling about what kind of relationship this was, right? This relationship had a lot of newness for the protagonist. She was able to discover something, someone who was able to provide her with a lot of novelty. And it's kind of like once you have a hit of something, you get addicted and you can never forget. Maybe that's why there are so many songs about this relationship. Protagonist said that they had one thing going on and she swears that it was something. Based on the context of Taylor's songs and the songs that I do believe are about this relationship, we know that this relationship wasn't really stable. So I think that's why the protagonist is saying that she swears it was something, because the actual facts about the relationship don't indicate that there was something strong, because they were falling apart and falling back together, like her lyrics from Out of the Woods state. But even though it wasn't stable, it was still something that she found value in. What's interesting to me, and also what's very interesting to think about, is that the protagonist says she doesn't remember who she was before her nights were painted this new color. This is becoming kind of existential now, isn't it? This is dealing with identity now. She's a different person. I think oftentimes we can define our lives in relation to changes. We can say we're in our like villain era, we're in our healing girl era, whatever. In this instance, this protagonist had a new era starting by meeting this person. He introduced her to something and she was a different person ever since. Her horizons were broadened. He was a catalyst for her in some regard. There's a lot of depth to this because of her mentioning she didn't know who she was before this. It's not just a fun memory she had, but she was altered as a human being, right? Her soul was altered due to this relationship. I also really enjoy the diction here, the word painted. To me, the word paint here connotes a feeling of softness. I think about like watercolor or even just oil paint. I think there's something soft about like the strokes of a paintbrush. I think that's beautiful. You're creating art. He was painting her nights a color. The fact that it's a night makes me think of date night, makes me think of them maybe being intimate with one another. So the colors here, I do want to view it more as watercolor just because I equate more emotions with watercolor, because watercolor kind of flows within the water before it settles down into the watercolor paper. To me, that sort of movement is romantic and cute. I didn't plan this, but my outfit, the fabric kind of reminds me of watercolors. It just kind of flows, and to me that represents emotions pretty beautifully. I love water imagery, so I know that I'm going on a tangent here, but these are the things I'm thinking about. So this first verse gives us context. This first verse really establishes for me what relationship this may be referring to. And I just really enjoy the diction here. The word I swear, you know, makes me think about the protagonist and how she wants to kind of prove that this meant something, even though the relationship wasn't stable. And I also enjoy the word painted. I think that's very beautiful. The word search, I also want to point out, because the word search connotes a feeling of intent to me. The protagonist was trying to seek this out again. This really affected her and she really wanted to find something like this again. Verse 2. But one thing after another, effing situation, circumstances, miscommunications. So even though this love interest introduced this protagonist to a brand new color, there was still a lack of stability in the relationship. There was always something, right? There was never a moment where everything was just peaceful. That's how I'm interpreting it. And the fact that it says effing situation makes it more emotionally charged, right? There's a little bit of like anger and annoyance by using the word effing. And I don't mind when Taylor curses. I actually kind of enjoy it. I find it satisfying, but I just omit those words on my channel. It's no big deal. Circumstances, miscommunications. Circumstances can refer to logistical things, scheduling, traveling for work, etc. Again, I'm thinking about this in the context of two superstars who are very busy. But you can also think about this in terms of your own life. Sometimes circumstances do hinder the progression of relationships. Miscommunications, you know, it just refers to miscommunications, misinterpreting someone's intentions, misinterpreting what they meant when they said that specific thing, reading their texts in a specific tone when they didn't mean for it to come across that way. And I think that when there is already like a bunch of effing situations going on, you're much more likely to interpret things within the relationship in a certain way. Like if everything was peaceful and chill, I think that both people might be more forgiving and understanding. But when there is already a lot of intense things going on in the relationship, when there's already situation after situation, that feeling of instability can leak into every crack that the relationship may have and kind of cause the crack to widen and cause the relationship to break apart a little bit more, which is very sad, but that's kind of what I'm thinking happened here. And I have to say, by the way, I just may like some explanations. I like the way that this is stated because it's kind of like the protagonist is just like talking out loud. She's like, and I have to say, by the way, I may like some explanations, right? I can imagine someone saying that with some attitude to their romantic partner. So I enjoy that. Like, it just seems like dialogue to me. Even though this, I think, is going on in the protagonist's mind, I like that it could be interpreted as dialogue. There's things that happened, right? Circumstances and miscommunications, and the protagonist is in a place where she wants explanations, right? She knows that things maybe were misconstrued during the relationship, but she wants to know what was up. She wants to know some facts. Chorus. I interrupt this video with a very special message from myself. This is sponsored by me. I want to let you guys know that I'm offering services on the website Fiverr. I'm offering a few different things. I can help you refine your own analysis skills to develop your own unique perspective about poetry, about song lyrics, about any written work. I've also been getting a lot of messages from you guys letting me know that you use my videos to help you learn English. So if you need an English conversation partner, I'm your girl. You can converse through the internet. I can help you with pronunciation, sentence structure, and random things about American culture that are not super intuitive. If you're a songwriter or a poet and want me to read your original piece of work and provide you with a very detail-oriented feedback, I can do that as well. All that information is going to be linked down below. If you have any questions about any of the services I'm offering, please message me directly through the website Fiverr. Back to the video that you actually clicked here for. And can I just say something? I find it incredibly interesting that the song style starts with the lyric midnight. Midnight, you come and pick me up, no headlights. Interesting. Why does everything about every Taylor Swift song make perfect sense and fit together? Why? Can I ask you a question? I think that the emotions behind this statement are very intense. This is just someone waiting to explode on another person because there is so much emotion going on and so many unanswered questions. I think that it can be very frustrating when there is constant situation after situation and constant miscommunications within a relationship, especially when you have very strong feelings for someone. And I would assume there are a lot of strong feelings if your love interest literally showed you, I mean metaphorically literally showed you an entire new color. So this is the first question. Did you ever have someone kiss you in a crowded room? The second question. And every single one of your friends was making fun of you, but 15 seconds later, they were clapping too. Third question. Then what did you do? What I think is being described here is the protagonist's situation, her experiences. This is the type of thing where you're kind of mad at someone and you're being a little bit passive aggressive. Just a little bit. You're asking them a question, and through that question, you are illustrating your experience. You're communicating your experience to the other person. So here the protagonist is telling the love interest here, and I don't think she's actually asking him these questions. I don't think that this is a conversation that was actually had. I think the protagonist is thinking about these things during one of these midnights. You can, of course, interpret this as an actual conversation that happened. Maybe the conversation took place around midnight, but to me, this is more of an internal dialogue as something you want to say to someone. I would actually love to know if you think these questions were actually asked IRL. Feel free to share your perspective with me down below in the comments. The protagonist is letting the love interest know that she was kissed in a crowded room. I'm assuming the love interest kissed her. And then she's letting the love interest know that all of her friends were making fun of her for kissing him, but 15 seconds later, those same friends were clapping. When I heard this the very first time, I thought about an award show. I don't know why. I thought about maybe the protagonist and their love interest kissing somewhere where there were a lot of people, like an event, like an award show or something. This is very random. This is not rooted in any facts. This is just literally what I thought the first time I heard this lyric. And then I thought about the protagonist of the song having a performance that night, and then those same friends that were making fun of her for kissing this person were like getting up and clapping because she did a good job performing. And to me, that would be indicative of friends who maybe weren't like the best. If your friends are making fun of you in like a kind of hurtful way and then they clap for you because you're a superstar, that may rub you the wrong way. When someone laughs at you and makes fun of you in private, them supporting you in a public setting can feel performative and disingenuous. That's what I was thinking about the first time I read this. And I do think that making fun of you was done in a hurtful way, or else this wouldn't be in the song. I know that friends can kind of just like troll each other out of love, and it's usually really chill, but it seems like this hit a nerve with the protagonist. That's what I'm gathering from the tone of this song. It says every single one of her friends was making fun of her, so it seems like this was a hurtful experience. We can also think about this just like as a party or something. I think that's probably something that makes more sense. So they kissed each other like in a public setting for the first time and her friends were making fun of her, but then 15 seconds later, they could have been clapping for another reason, or they could have been clapping maybe because now they randomly ship the relationship. I think either of those interpretations work. Maybe the protagonist kissed the love interest again that same night, 15 seconds later, and then they were like on board with it. But to me personally, I think that this is meant to indicate that her friends were being performative and disingenuous towards her. They were making fun of her for kissing this person, but then maybe 15 seconds later, she was doing something else and they were hyping her up for it. I get that friends may do things like this from time to time and it may not be that deep, but it seems like it was that deep in this instance. This is the kind of thing where like the person she was kissing may not have been aware that she experienced this, and this is her way of letting him know. However, there's a lot of subtext here because of the context of this song. There's a lot of charged emotions behind this. I think this is an example maybe of something that this love interest wasn't able to recognize, that this protagonist had to like go through. I'm thinking about patterns here. So maybe there's a pattern in this relationship where this love interest wasn't able to be empathetic towards the protagonist. Maybe he wasn't able to put himself into her shoes, and she's giving him an example now of like, do you know what it feels like when this happened? No, you don't, because you're never able to hear my side of things. You're never able to put yourself in my position. Those are the sorts of things I'm thinking about here. And then it says, then what did you do? This is kind of like a rhetorical question in my opinion. There's really no answer. Now we have another set of questions, and I think this is about a separate scenario. It says, did you leave her house in the middle of the night? Did you wish you'd put up more of a fight? So I think this is talking about another girl. If you remember in the song Style, there were the lyrics, I heard you've been out and about with some other girl, and then he says, what you heard is true, but I can't stop thinking about you. Okay, whatever. So I think that is the situation being referred to here in the second half of the chorus. When it says, did you leave her house in the middle of the night, it's referring to the other girl that the love interest here was seeing. Then the protagonist asks, did you wish you'd put up more of a fight? I think this is referring to a fight to keep the other girl. My impression of this is that the other girl that the love interest was seeing broke things off with him. He didn't break things off with her. That's why the protagonist is asking, did you wish you'd put up more of a fight to try to keep this other girl after she broke up with you? When she said it was too much, do you wish you could still touch her? This is why I think she broke up with him, because she probably said, you know what, this is too much, it's too stressful, I can't see you anymore. And the protagonist is wondering if he fought for this other girl. Because based on the lyrics and style, and just based on the vibe about this relationship that we get from the songs that are allegedly about this relationship, there was a lot of instability, and it seems like they were seeing other people at times, at least he was. The protagonist wants to know if he picked her, the protagonist, or if he's with the protagonist in this instance just because someone else didn't want him. There's a difference between someone choosing you when there are other options versus someone choosing you when there are no other options. I think the protagonist here is wondering if she's the first choice or the second. She probably thinks that she was the second choice. That's why she's asking these questions. So the other girl broke things off with the love interest, and the protagonist wants to know, did you still want to touch her? Did you still want to be intimate with her? Did you still want to kiss her? Am I your first choice or your second? She's trying to figure out where she stands with this person. Then the last lyric of the chorus I find very heartbreaking. It's just a question. You know, it is just a question, but the answers could have detrimental emotional consequences for our protagonist, right? Because she was thinking all of these things before she asked the question. And when you say things like it's just a question in real life, you often say that in situations where you ask a loaded question and where you kind of already know the answer. The protagonist kind of already knows the answer, but she's just trying to get him to say it out loud to confirm it for her. Sometimes you intuitively know that, like, oh, you're not the first choice, you're the second choice, but you still muster up the courage to ask that question to at least get confirmation. Sometimes getting confirmation from someone, it's kind of like getting closure. Like them telling you they don't want you is kind of easier than you not knowing. When something is is left open-ended, you're like, maybe they do want me, maybe I am the first choice. But if they literally tell you, oh, I'm sorry, like I actually love her more, like it's hurtful, but it's easier for you to move on. Clarity is very helpful. I just talked about this in my You're on Your Own Kid analysis, link down below. The protagonist was searching for clarity. She wants to know where she stands with this love interest. Verse 3. I'm going to read this entire verse and then we're going to talk about it because I think it's all referring to one situation, one moment in time. It says, half moon eyes, bad surprise, did you realize? Out of time, she was on your mind with some D-head guy that you saw that night, but you were on something. So this is something that happened. I think this is an interaction that happened between the love interest and the other girl. He like ran into her and the protagonist was there. That's how I'm interpreting it. This is kind of like, not the evidence, but it's kind of like the data points she had that maybe caused her to ask the questions she did in the second half of the chorus. It says half moon eyes, bad surprise, did you realize? So a full moon is a circle and then the half moon is half a circle. I'm an astrologist. So half moon eyes could be referring to like the shape of the other girl's eyes, and that could be the bad surprise because he, the love interest, is running into the other girl. Or this could be referring to the love interest's eyes. Maybe his eyes are kind of like half moon because he was on something. Maybe he was taking some recreational substances that maybe would cause him to kind of close his eyes more than usual. That's something to think about as well. Here's what I think actually happened. I think the love interest and the protagonist were out and about and they ran into the other girl. So this is the other girl that this love interest was also spending time with, and the other girl that kind of broke things off with him. This is the other girl that the protagonist was asking the questions about in the previous verse, in the chorus. So the love interest and protagonist were together and they ran into her. Now in verse 3, this is a different night, not the night they ran into the other girl, but it's maybe like a few nights later, and the protagonist kind of like thinking about the events of a few nights prior and perhaps the love interest's reaction to seeing the other girl. The bad surprise was the love interest here seeing the other girl with some D-head guy. That was the bad surprise for him. He saw that this other girl moved on. Then it says, did you realize? Out of time, she was on your mind. I think did you realize here is the protagonist referring to the other girl moving on. She, I think, is looking at her love interest and being like, interesting. Did you realize that night that she had moved on, or did you already know this? She was trying to gauge his reaction to seeing his ex, I guess, the other girl with a new guy. She was trying to gauge his reaction to seeing them together. That's what I think is happening here. Out of time, she was on your mind. I think out of time just refers to the fact that the love interest has no more chances with the other girl. Throughout this verse, I do think the protagonist still thinks she was perhaps the second choice. And it seems like when the love interest ran into the other girl with some D-head guy, he was on something. Maybe he was high, was taking some recreational substances. So maybe his reaction was kind of off that night. And maybe that's why the protagonist is still trying to decipher the nature of his reaction to seeing the ex with another guy. This sounds like a lot of he said, she said, but I think this is a he said, she said sort of situation that's being depicted here. The essence of this is that the protagonist doesn't know where she stands with her love interest, and the love interest doesn't seem to be giving her definite answers. His actions and his words don't really match, so she's trying to figure out what's going on. She's a mastermind. She's trying to be a detective right now and trying to analyze the situation to see where she stands with him. Verse 4. It was one drink after another, effing politics and gender roles, and you're not sure, and I don't know. So this is another moment in time. It could be a continuation of maybe the moment in time depicted in verse 3, or it could be a new moment. So this was the night when they were drinking, both the protagonist and the love interest, and they were just talking about things. Lots of very lively conversation that's obviously very lighthearted, like politics and gender roles, you know, just same thing as talking about the weather, totally the same. After having those very light-hearted conversations, they were talking about where they stood within their romantic relationship. He was saying he wasn't sure and he didn't know how he felt about the protagonist, or he didn't know about like becoming official, something along those lines. Then it says, got swept away in the gray. I just may like to have a conversation. This is very emotionally frustrating for the protagonist. That's how I am thinking about this situation. They both got swept away into the gray area, right? When something is black and white, there's a definite answer. When there is a gray area, there's a lot of unsureness. The protagonist and the love interest are in a gray area and they got swept away in it. It's kind of like when the tide comes in and the water sweeps something out into the ocean. That's the image I have. So they got swept away into a gray area. It was like a force kind of made them go into this gray area. It makes it seem more intense. So the protagonist is not getting any answers from this love interest. That's why she would like to have a conversation. The diction here, the phrase swept away, to me is significant. It indicates that it was kind of out of the protagonist's hands. When something gets swept away into the ocean, it's due to the force of nature. That to me connotes an overwhelming sort of feeling, and perhaps even a helpless sort of feeling. Just being in a gray area doesn't connote a lot of intense emotion. It can connote like a softer, somber connotation, but the addition of the word swept away makes it more intense, in my opinion. The protagonist wants to have a conversation so she can find some clarity and perhaps some peace. Bridge. This bridge is really interesting, especially the way that it's sung. There's a lot of very interesting things going on sonically on this album that I am not qualified to talk about or to really interpret in a technical way. I only know how the melodic things and how Taylor's voice make me feel emotionally, but this song is super cool. This album has a lot of really intricate things going on in the sound department and in regards to Taylor's voice, so I just wanted to mention that. Maybe someday I will magically learn how music is sonically crafted so I can provide you with valuable comments, but all I can offer you now is that it's really cool, and I love how she says suitable and right in the bridge. It's kind of distorted a little bit. So the first line of the bridge says, "Does it feel like everything's just like second best after that meteor strike?" The way Taylor sings it, it's like, does it feel like, I don't know the term for this. You know, I was in middle school band and I took 1 year of like instruments class in high school, but I never like really learned much because I never practiced. It's fine. Feel free to guess what instrument I played in the comments below. Is it called a staccato? I don't know if what is going on here is called the staccato. Don't laugh at me. I literally never paid attention in band class. Like, it's fine. But it's very abrupt and like pointed the way that Taylor sings it. She's like, does it feel like everything's just like, you know what I mean? It's kind of like you're poking something. And to me, it feels like angry a little bit, but also annoyed a little bit. The tone and the rhythmic way in which Taylor is singing this is very, very significant. If you know the correct term, please feel free to share that down below. But I wanted to mention that I think it's very significant. This line goes hand in hand with the last line of verse 1, talking about the introduction of a new color into the protagonist's life. This love interest here is being depicted as a meteor strike. In the first verse, they were depicted as introducing a newness into the protagonist's life. Now, this is even elevated further, in my opinion, with the phrase meteor strike. It's like a meteor hit this metaphorical planet, and when a meteor hits, there's going to be a crater, right? There's going to be visual evidence that something has hit. And to dive into this a little bit further, a meteor comes from space. It's otherworldly, right? It's so novel, it's foreign to the protagonist. It's not just about how big of an impact this had, that it's like a meteor strike, but it's also coming from another universe. How do you get over something like that? It's a meteor. It can shift things upon impact. So the protagonist now is asking this question, and this question is much more vulnerable. This reminds me of All Too Well, the 10-minute version, Taylor's version. And yes, that analysis is coming. I literally filmed half of it like last year, and then I lost some footage, and it's just a mess, like an editing mess right now. So I'm probably going to refilm things. I have no idea when it's going to come out. I'm so sorry. I still get some questions about that every now and then. I promise it's going to come out eventually. I don't know when yet, hopefully soon, but there's a lyric in All Too Well, the 10-minute version, that's towards the very end, that is so vulnerable, and it like makes me cry. Towards the end of All Too Well, the 10-minute version, there's a lyric that says, "Just between us." Ooh, it even hurts to just like repeat it. "Just between us, did the love affair maim you too?" That lyric showcases so much vulnerability and hurt. It's the protagonist in that song, after saying all they just said, just maybe wanting a little bit of validation in what they're feeling. I'm reminded of that here a little bit. The intensity is much less. I don't think anything is as intense as All Too Well, the 10-minute version. So the intensity is less here in my opinion. However, I think it's a similar sort of thing here where the protagonist now is looking for some validation. It's always hurtful to even fathom that you love someone exponentially more than they care for you. You may love them a a little bit more or they may love you a little bit more, but like it averages out, right? You would prefer for it to average out to be equal. It can be frightening to realize that you love them so much and you're their second choice. So I think the first question in the bridge illustrates that sort of feeling. Does it ever feel like everything's just second best after that meteor strike? This showcases some vulnerability because the protagonist is admitting that this situationship had a very big impact on her and nothing compares to it. Everything is second best. Even though she was potentially his second choice, to her, he is very much on a pedestal and everything in comparison to him is second best. That's frightening, emotionally frightening. And what's that I heard? That you're still with her. That's nice. I'm sure that's what's suitable. And suitable is distorted. I'm not gonna try to distort it the way that Taylor does. Please go listen to it. It's distorted in a very interesting way. To me, it connotes a feeling of very intense anger and frustration. It's kind of like the sort of frustration and anger where your eyes widen and you're just like this, like a villain in a movie a little bit. So it says, that's nice. I'm sure that's what's suitable and right. The word right is also distorted. So it's like she's saying these things, perhaps exchanging niceties like, oh, I'm sure that's suitable, that's great, you're meant for each other. But the true feelings she has about those two words are represented through the distorted voice. It's really sad when you read through this and you actually envision the entirety of the situation. This whole time, this relationship was a very big deal to the protagonist, but she was never his first choice. That's what it seems like according to this lyric. He's either back together with that ex or he is still with her, even though she was with some other guy with that D-bag. And the protagonist is saying, you know what, that's nice. This is definitely a different type of nice that's in the song Bejeweled. Definitely different, right? Nice. The protagonist is still asking questions. And, you know, I want to point out the song title is a singular question. There's no S, but she has multiple questions and she already knows the answer to most of them. She heard that he's still with her, with that other girl. Now, this could not be a chronological progression. Maybe this bridge is just showcasing a very intense moment, and then this could be what led to the conversation that we had depicted in the song Style, where it says, I heard that you've been out and about with some other girl, and then he said, what you heard is true. So those could go hand in hand. We don't know like the exact chronological nature of everything. Maybe what occurred in the bridge happened before what we had in verse 3, where they saw the love interest's ex with that D-bag guy. However, I'm more inclined to think about this song as chronological. I think that organization would make more sense. So perhaps he did end up choosing that other girl and getting back together with her. And the protagonist really has the answer now, but she didn't get the answer from him. She said that she heard it. And to me, this is another thing, another piece of diction, another detail that links this song to the same relationship discussed in Style. Because in Style, the lyric literally says, I heard. And even in the song, it kind of stands out. It's like, I heard. I can't sing, you guys. I'm so sorry. And I can't play this song due to copyright, so please go listen to it. But in Style, it's like, I heard. It sticks out a little bit. I heard you were out and about with some other girl. And here it's saying, what's that I heard? She's getting answers from other people, but not from the source. And that must be very frustrating and very hurtful. So the title question could also have anger behind it, right? Because she's hearing all of these things, but the person who should be telling her these things isn't. There are some things where it becomes embarrassing for you to have to ask, because if that person respected you enough, they would just tell you. And I'm talking more generally here. Again, I don't want to tie this to the people we think it's about. We don't know 100%. So just generally speaking, it's always much better to hear things from the source when it's regarding your personal matters. So all the questions being asked here are coming from someone who is in a place of confusion and hurt. This song sounds very fun and cool, and it's really fun to listen to, but behind this song, I think there's a lot of pain, confusion, and frustration. That's all I have for this song. Please let me know what you think in the comments below. I always enjoy hearing your take. All of my tutoring services will be linked down below as well. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you next time. Bye!